everyone, to our very last session of the Spring 2023 series of Tuesday Times Roundtable. TTR is the Office of Global Learning Initiative's flagship discussion series that brings together multiple perspectives on current global issues and trends. You can learn more about TTR, watch past recordings, or come back and reference this one at go.fiu.edu/TTR. My name is Michelle Zaldivar, your Senior Program Coordinator here at the Office of Global Learning Initiatives. If you haven't already, please take a moment to sign in, either using this QR code or the link in the chat. This is absolutely where we capture attendance. So whether you're here for Honors College or Global Learning or Medallion or Micro-Credential Points, we are absolutely glad that you are here with us today and encourage you to take this moment to sign in. If you want to learn more about the Office of Global Learning and the things that we do and connect to other global learning type of activities on campus, we absolutely recommend that you follow us on social media. You can find us especially on Instagram at GoGlobalFIU. Tuesday Times Roundtable is brought to you through a formal partnership with the New York Times, which provides everyone in our FIU community with free digital subscription. Every TTR is tied to a New York Times article. You can read today's article at go.fiu.edu/TTR04110411. And if you haven't activated your subscription yet and you get to a paywall when you get to that point, you can activate your New York Times subscription at accessnyt.com. If you're looking for more ways to get involved and find maybe some funding or support for research and engagement projects that you're trying to do on campus, I highly encourage you to check out two programs that we promote. One is the Millennium Fellowship, which you'll hear all about today. And the other is the Office of Global Learning Initiative's Student Fellowship. So it's the Global Learning Student Fellowship. These are great opportunities for you to do either a research or an engagement project, receive funding up to a $1,500 stipend in the past, and you can receive additional connections and support to be able to finish your projects and see it to fruition. The deadlines are fast approaching. One is the 21st and the 22nd of this month, so they are very, very quick. You can learn more about either of these opportunities at go.fiu.edu/glfellow. and about the Millennium Fellowship at millenniumfellows.org/apply. Moderating our discussion today, finding your inner leader through the Millennium Fellowship, is our Assistant Director in charge of Student Programming, Anna Prado. A Miami native and FIU grad and current doctoral candidate, Anna is deeply connected to the issues that move our students to action and a fierce advocate for student involvement and leadership. So if you can take this moment, join me in welcoming Anna Prado, who will introduce us to the rest of our student leader panel.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you, all of you who are here. I know that many of you are huge fans of these fine Millennium Fellows, and I'm with you on that. So welcome Panthers and community members. As my colleague Michelle Zaldivar mentioned, my name is Anna Prado. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Global Learning Initiatives, but you did not come to see me or hear me today. And so in a moment, I'm going to introduce you to our all-star panelists for the day. But I wanted to start us off by framing our session today with some of the larger ideas that we're discussing, because especially since we're talking about leadership, it's nice for us to get the ball rolling there. And I think we can all agree that leadership skills are in high demand. And also that our job as educators and as staff and supporters at FIU is to help you hone these skills while we work together. In fact, most of you in the audience today, it's that time of the semester when you're probably making a list of all of the leadership things that you did and submitting your points for this, whether it's in a personal statement, a scholarship, or an internship application, your CVs, or you're uploading to Panther Connect. And I think it's extremely important for all of you in the audience today to hear from students who have figured all of this out, who have found ways to develop their leadership skills while still working towards their degrees here at FIU. So today it is my pleasure to share with you the insight of 4 of the 2022 Millennium Fellows so that you can see how the fellowship itself and their work in it really sharpened their leadership skills. And I think we also need to talk today about what leadership skills look like and come up with some common definitions, because how can we expect you to develop them if we don't even know what they are? So that's one of our goals for today. So without further ado, I present to you Natalie Concepción, who is a junior majoring in political science and international relations, and who focused on sustainability, particularly sustainable fashion, and still works on that as part of the Global Learning Fellowship. So this honor student is also a GL Fellow and part of our GL Medallion program. Next, we have Venus Danu, a pre-medical senior here at FIU who is studying dietetics and nutrition with a minor in biology and chemistry. Her project was on food waste and food insecurity, and like Natalie, she still continues that work today. Venus is a part of PHIDE, pre-medical fraternity, and a current research assistant at the Metabone clinical trial. And as a future physician, Venus believes strongly in having a strong global mindset in order to target global future physicians. So our next panelist is going to be Anastasia Legouté, who's an international student from Haiti doing a double major in psychology and political science, also an honors student, a Global Learning Medallion student, and a member of FIU's Model UN team. Her project focused on the need to include Haitian female heroes in history textbooks in her home country, and that important work also continues today. And last but definitely not least in any way except for the alphabetical order of today's panelists' last names, we have Natalie Martinez, a sophomore double majoring in political science and international relations, an honor student, a global learner, an intern for the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom, and a fellow for the Foray Institute. Her project helped educate the FIU community in civic engagement and responsibility with the national debt. And so today, these student leaders will share how their work in the Millennium Fellowship developed their leadership skills, often in surprising ways. But before we fill you with knowledge, right, we're going to have a little assignment for all of you. So the question is, where do you lead? We're going to ask you some questions in a poll. So if we can do the first question, Michelle. Where do you consider yourself a leader? You can only pick one. So pick one of these.
I actually think we did set it up that you can choose more than one.
Oh, we can't? Okay, then choose several.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, if you think it's only one, if you want to pick that strongest among these, by all means, feel free to.
All right, so it looks like most of us think that we can get leadership opportunities with friends and at home or in an extracurricular group, with few people looking for that in a classroom setting, which I'm very curious about that. I'm glad we included that nowhere, because if you don't see yourself as a leader, then you don't really find those opportunities for developing it, right? All right, excellent, really, really interesting. In an extracurricular group, we're going to circle back to that in a little minute. So we have one more question that we want to ask you.
So we still have a couple of them coming in. I'm going to end the poll and share the results so everyone can see. This is our shared experience.
Look at that. 52% say that we develop leaderships with our friends. I like that. So where are some places you think you can develop or improve your leadership skills? Let's see if we can address this one.
I love to see the optimism of this group. I know we haven't shared the results yet, but no one so far has said nowhere.
Yes.
I love to see it.
Well, and in the chat, we've got a few people talking about workplace, and that's actually a really good point. Because those of us who have maybe internships, fellowships, and other kinds of things, that is kind of a workplace. We've got about 70% of you who've responded. We'll give it just another minute or two. I like this one from the chat. Rafael says, everywhere we go, it within us and it follows us. I like that. That's what a true leader is.
I closed it off, Anna, so.
Perfect. All right, so we've got 64% of students and participants today who say that they can develop their leadership skills in class. So this is a very different from the previous one, right? That we may not see ourselves as leaders in our classes, but we rely on our classroom to actually help us develop them. That's really interesting. And an extracurricular group, which is, I think, why we see a huge amount of undergraduate students and FIU in particular who are really engaged in extracurricular activities. The 4 students that I've introduced you to today are all in several clubs and several organizations there. So when you hear their CV, you see all the things they're engaged in, because it is a really great way to take a look at that. So thank you so much for participating, everyone. That really helps us kind of get a sense of where you're coming from in terms of leadership. So I want to start our discussion with a brief introduction to the Millennium Fellowship. So Natalie M., can you give us like an overview of the Millennium Fellowship itself?
Sure, Anna. In my opinion, to know what the Millennium Fellowship is, you really have to know what it is not. So we're not talking about an internship. We're not talking about just a club on campus. We're also not talking about a traditional community service role. Specifically, the Millennium Fellowship is an undergraduate fellowship where students within universities come together as a cohort and complete various social impact projects that are based on one of 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Our last cohort for the 2022-2023 school year had approximately 16 students, some of which did individual projects, some of which did group projects. And the largest benefit of being a part of this cohort really comes with the professional development that's entrenched into the program. We had a lot of mandated sessions by the United Nations Academic Impact and the Millennium Campus Network, which allowed us to expand on our leadership skills. And we would meet on a weekly basis with our campus director, Natalie Concepción. Approximately for this last cohort, where there were around 30,000 applicants, and I think only 2,400, 2,500 got in. So it's a relatively prestigious and selective process, but it's very worthwhile in the end.
Thank you for that. I do think it was worthwhile. And I will say that I have a new appreciation for the Millennium Fellowship because I work so closely with this cohort of fellows that I got to see this development firsthand. And I was really impressed by that. So Natalie, we're talking about leadership today. And I bet you people in the audience are like, wait, how does a Millennium Fellowship connect? It's great, we do a project. Why am I getting a leadership point? Can you tell us a little bit about the links between the Millennium Fellowship and like leadership traits in particular?
Well, if you don't consider yourself a leader by the time that you apply to the Millennium Fellowship, you're absolutely going to consider yourself one by the time that you leave. From the application process to the ideation process where you're starting to create your project to the actual implementation process and the wrap up, you're honing in on different leadership competencies throughout the way, whether it's working on how self-aware you are or working on how you are able to strategically develop a project, or even if it has to do with, I guess, your cultural or civic connections to your community. So individuals can, if they're not ready in their leadership journey, still apply to the Millennium Fellowship, but they have to do so with an open mind and an expectation that they are going to grow these competencies by the end of it.
Thank you. Yes, I agree entirely. And I remember we've had a couple of discussions already about how surprised we were about some of the competencies that we develop. So I would say, as somebody who has firsthand knowledge and is completely unbiased, that these 4 Millennium Fellows found self-awareness and development and strategic planning were the 2 things that were the most obvious about their development and the things that they've been reflecting on the most. And I would also say it's the thing that has given them a lot of tangible value. So that's what we're going to focus on the most today. So Venus, you and I talked a lot about self-awareness and development. I know throughout the course of the fellowship itself. How would you explain this really general ephemeral term, self-awareness and development, in terms of leadership skills? Like, what does this mean?
I would say self-awareness is being aware of like in essence what you're trying to develop or even have people understand. And then self-discipline also helps you have that awareness come to fruition. At first in this fellowship, I was like, okay, so I know that I want to combat food waste, but how do I go about it? So many times it was like, oh my gosh, what should I do? How can I convey to others who don't really are aware of food waste what we could do to stop it? So I remember coming even to your office and saying, what should I do? And we sorted it out that I should start by writing down what it is that food waste is and what are some ways to talk to people and convey a grounded structure as to how to combat it gradually on our campus. So I would say that a good leader, having that self-awareness of knowing overall what it is that you're going to do and how you're going to combat it is a great way to effectively be a great leader wherever you are.
I like that. And I do remember you coming into my office. We make it sound like it was very calm and relaxed. I was like, what do I do now? And one of the most important things that Venus and I did was take out a piece of paper, be like, okay, what is our goal, right? And so when we talk about personal awareness, self-awareness, we're talking about what is it that I want to accomplish? It's important to shut out the noise of other people telling you what you should be doing. What is my project? And I think that's one of the beauties of the Millennium Fellowship is that it's student designed, is that you take your passion and create a project based on what you think the success would be. So I like that. Thank you for sharing that, Venus. So the next big focus of our panel, and I think something that everyone is interested in knowing more about is strategic planning. So Natalie C., can you give us a working definition of strategic planning in terms of the work you did with the fellowship?
Yeah, of course. So I think if you're like me before you started this fellowship, you might not even know what strategic planning is. And so the regular definition, it's like you define a vision for the future, and then you identify what you can do to kind of reach that objective. And I kind of feel like I had a unique perspective on this. I was the campus director of our cohort. And we really began to talk about strategic planning very, very early on. And when I tell you that a lot of us struggled to kind of figure out what directions our projects were going to go in, kind of where we were going to head, because these are skills that you wouldn't normally develop. And I know that here at FIU, there are other ways to kind of develop these experiences that are not just limited to like groups and working in class. But the thing is that in a class setting, perhaps, you kind of feel this pressure to do it correctly. And you don't have that time to learn through trial and error. And the fellowship gives you that perfect opportunity to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I know we'll talk a little bit about the rest of our experiences when it comes to strategic planning, but I know for a fact that when you really are trying to figure out how to get this plan in motion, it can seem daunting. It could seem like you have this really, really big goal. And I had huge goals. I was convinced that this project was going to be 500 articles of clothing, 300 people impacted. And the whole point is that you learn that, to be realistic, you also learn what you can handle in a set amount of time. And I feel like that's the beauty of the fellowship. It gives you a space to do this. It gives you the space to learn.
I like that, Natalie. I think that that's really powerful. And not because you can't enact big change, but because so much of the most important and most lasting and sustainable change is something that starts small. And from all of the projects that I saw students working with in the Millennium Fellowship in 2022, it was about creating a structure or a system, and it was answering the question, what would fixing this look like? And that to me is the unique aspect of the Millennium Fellowship in that, and Natalie Martinez and Venus have touched upon this as well. It's a safe space to be like, I wonder how this would work. And I think that's a powerful thing. So now we're gonna just have a couple more questions where we're gonna talk about our personal experiences with the fellowship. So Anastasia, I'm going to start with you on this one because you and I spoke quite frequently about planning, and I know that you can extend what Natalie has just shared with us. How did the process of developing your project in particular, since you worked alone on this one, how did it help you sharpen your strategic planning skills, and what lessons did you learn about planning?
In fact, Anna, we did talk a lot about strategic planning, which is a very important component when it comes to developing a project. After organizing a successful webinar titled Between Feminism and History, Women in the Haitian Revolution, I came up with a process, 4 steps that can help you achieve your goal. The first one is to define your vision. The second one is to determine your priority and objective. The third one is to assess where you are. And the fourth one is to measure and evaluate your results. And to answer your question about the overall lesson I learned about planning, I'm going to focus on the second step, which is determine your priority and vision. Because starting this project, I had so many ideas and I wanted to do so much. I wanted to organize a webinar. I wanted to do a coffee hour, an Haitian coffee hour, do a visit to a museum, so many things that I wanted to do. And I added all of this in my application. And while talking to my mentor, Dr. Chantal Gana, and also talking to you, Anna, you guys told me to re-evaluate my project and to evaluate what I can do, because I am a full-time student. I am a leader in a lot of other organizations, and I'm not able to do all of this in that very short amount of time. So if you're applying to the Millennium Fellowship, if you're considering, I highly encourage you to do that. Or you have any project in general, make sure to define your priorities. It is better to focus on one thing and it turns out great than to do different activities and it turns out bad or unorganized. So today, I can say that I organized the webinar, I did organize the Haitian Coffee Hour while also doing the visit to the first museum where I bring about 20 to 30 students to go see the Everything Earth and Sky Haitian exhibit. All of these were successful, but I took them step by step.
Thank you for that shameless plug, first of all, Anastasia. Yes, the Millennium Fellowship deadline has been extended. I've seen a couple of questions in the chat. We'll wrap up with that a little bit later, but you still have plenty of time to apply, and it is absolutely worth it. I do think that if you go into it with the idea that I just want to get the experience and I just want to do something and I just want to make change, you're going to get so much out of it, whether or not you do exactly what you meant to do or not. I think as Anastasia mentioned there, she really took it one step at a time. I don't think there's anything wrong with dreaming big and then saying, but for now I'm going to do this. And after the fellowship ended, Anastasia still did her Haitian Coffee Hour. And that project still is alive and well today. And so I think that that's an important part of how the work is extended beyond that. So Natalie M, I want to circle back to self-reflection, because what Anastasia's talking about now reminded me about the sense that like, we've got to understand our limits, right? And what we can accomplish. So the fellowship provided opportunities throughout and different touch points for self-reflection. How did your experience with the Millennium Fellowship tie into your own self-awareness and development? And where did you find yourself focused on your own thinking and your own process and yourself?
Thanks, Anna. This is quite different to share than when we did this presentation at the BBC Leadership Summit, because now I'm talking about a personally perceived failure in front of 260 students rather than 10. But I'm a little bit different than most of the Millennium Fellows in our cohort because I did not end up with the project that I started off with. TLDR, my first project was very much based on higher ed and was a reflection of a small side project that I had done in high school. And I thought that I'd be able to handle it. I didn't think too strategically when I went forth with it because I was thinking with my heart, I was doing something that I was interested in, so to speak. But as the days trickled by during the semester, I just had to come to terms with the fact that it wasn't going to work out with how my schedule works and how the schedules of high schoolers work. There was a bit of a dissonance, right? It wasn't going to be able to add up in a way that would allow me to be my best in all of the other commitments that I had as well. And it was actually pretty shameful, because nobody wants to admit that they've bitten off more than they can chew. And nobody wants to admit when, they've dropped the ball or that, they're too overextended. And in other contexts, when that happens, you don't have a safety net. You usually don't even have someone to turn to. And if that's the case, oftentimes you do get scorned, you do get shunned. But the beauty of the Millennium Fellowship is that it really is like a practice experience. It's a learning experience. And we had the guidance of Ms. Aldevar and Ms. Prado and the Office of Global Learning as a whole. But we also did have the support system of the Millennium Fellowship itself and their coordinators. And the way that their program is structured, there is the ability to change your project midway. So, let's talk middle of the semester. I thought I was, screwed. I didn't know what I was going to do until I spoke to Anna, and we went back and forth, and we realized that I was already doing something very, very, very akin to a social impact project already through the Up to Us campus competition. So I obviously contacted the Millennium Fellowship, and the social impact campaign that I was doing there fell under a sustainable development goal, and they approved the swap. And in this case, right, sometimes people may think that you're a little overambitious, that, you're trying to double dip, so to speak, but sometimes you have to just be practical and pragmatic, right? Sometimes you just have to say that enough is enough, and that, you are able to use your experiences and the things that you're doing to the fullest without any shame, right? The only way that I was able to do this, though, the only way that I come to these large realizations and that I'm willing to take these much larger steps to come to the completion of the fellowship, it all really did come down to self-awareness, right? To be aware of the fact that something wasn't working, and aware of the fact that there was a way to fix it, and that I would have to put in just a little bit more legwork in order to actually complete the fellowship, because giving up usually is not the best course of action for anybody. Because if you really want something, you can always make it work. And although this does tie into strategic planning, because a lot of the times we have hiccups that's associated to a lack of strategic planning, self-awareness does allow you to come to a lot of self-realization in terms of what you can handle, what are your priorities, what's worth it to you, and what are you willing to do to get where you need to be. So at least for me, that was my most important leadership competency during the fellowship, even though my project was civically oriented, and civic engagement and civic leadership is also a, component of leadership. So that was my story.
Thank you for sharing that, Natalie. I mean, I think it's really brave, and that's something that I always, with my students, point out, that being able to say, no, that's not something I can do right now, it takes a lot of bravery, particularly in the context of a prestigious internship, a prestigious fellowship, and knowing that it's not me, that I've given all I can, but that I've got to find a way to adjust this to make it work for me. I think that that's an important trait that all leaders have. And it's something that we rarely talk about, because the idea is leadership is all about being excellent, and everything is awesome, and everything is good, and everything is smooth sailing. And that's not how life works. And I think having the valuable experience of doing something, and I would say failing forward, right? Being able to say that I stumbled, this is not quite working for me, but you finished the fellowship. And so that's what I would be the ultimate indicator of success. And that's also something that's embedded into what the Millennium Fellowship is, in that you decide what the success of your project looks like when you develop the project, so that you're the ultimate arbiter of, yes, I did it, I win, right? I get the certificate, which I think is important. We should do more of that, where I'm like, I'm awesome, pat myself on back, I get certificate for that. I wish we could do more of that. So Anastasia, I'm going to circle back to you for a second, because I remember that you and I talked a little bit about your fellowship itself in terms of classwork. And so what connection do you see between the leadership opportunities of the fellowship and the knowledge you've gained from your classes, right?
Yes, and at that same semester, I took Women in Politics and Women Political Theory, two great classes with two amazing professors. They were also very interested about my project and also helped me advertise my webinar in the classes. So while I was working on my project on the Women in the Haitian Revolution, it was great to learn about the fight for women's rights around the world, as well as the ascension of women in American politics. Both of those classes helped me shape my idea to use history as an empowering tool that can remind Haitian girls, boys that they have the power to change Haiti and that they have the power to change the world too.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Venus, and I'm gonna, because I want to make sure I include you, and then I know Natalie has an example that I think I want everyone to hear as well. But Venus, you're a future doctor. How does the work that you do here impact you? And let's be real, your career goals, applying to med school. Like, how does this Millennium Fellowship play a role in your future plans?
Yeah, that's a fun question. So yeah, it's really weird since I'm like the only pre-med in the group. Like, why am I doing this? However, when I applied for this fellowship, I really was committed to something called sustainability. And sustainability is something that is going to affect my patients in the future, and something that we can go on and have a whole TTR on. So that was something that really motivated me, that if I can have a fellowship that's a bit DIY, I should jump on it because it's gonna impact the future. But another critical component was that I wanted a fellowship that would challenge me to go into places, to talk to administrators, to even evaluate what it is I want, and talk to and advocate for the students on campus. And that's essentially what even future physicians are supposed to do. There's going to be, of course, scenarios that people are going to be telling you, no, there's no way. And it'll be like cost assessment and not all these things. However, if you develop leadership skills from things such as the Millennium Fellowship, you will be able to go into places and rooms of administration and talk about why a certain treatment is important for your patient. So I feel like a leadership task like this was something that I really liked, because at any given moment, there could be a sudden change and I had to react to that. And of course, with the tools that we've seen, even in the conversation hours that we had with Natalie as our campus director, she gave us many great tools to help us navigate sudden reactions. And as a future physician, I do know that the tools I've learned through this fellowship will help me, that when there's a scenario in the ICU that I have to manage and control what is the outcome of my patient, I will be able to talk to the people in charge with great authority and with great leadership skills.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I think it's really important that we do things not just to mark off the box and to get our point for things, but to see how it can impact our work. That's the reason that departments require these kinds of engagement, because it's good for you, but also because it really shows you how to do the work in real time in the world. And I think that's really important. So Natalie, before we move on to our wrap-up activity, your project was not connected to either your coursework or your major, which I always find really, really interesting. So how did you develop the project, and how did it prepare you for the work that you're doing now, which is very different?
Yeah, so just for like background, I'm a pre-law student with really a focus on human rights. But this project kind of started as an interest because I was passionate about sustainability. I cared about it, but it wasn't the primary focus of maybe my coursework or my career. But I still wanted to kind of develop it, kind of dive into it, see what it was about. And to be honest, when I was applying for the Millennium Fellowship, I felt lost. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so this project was kind of developed as a group. I got to meet and kind of create this Panther Sustainability Hub with some incredible people that I wouldn't have met had I not done the fellowship. And when it comes to how this really impacts me in the future and how and the work I'm doing now, I'm currently a legal policy intern for the Human Rights Campaign. And the kind of lessons I learned throughout this fellowship are strategic planning lessons, or self-awareness lessons. Those really come in handy when you're looking at other things as well. I know in the legal field, in the work I'm doing as a legal policy intern, I'm constantly going back to, oh yeah, I kind of know what this is about. I learned this in the fellowship. I was used to doing this in the fellowship. And I think the fellowship just provided you with that area that even if it's not something you really want to pursue in the future, it's still nice to try. figure out what you're into, what you're not into, because this is the perfect spot to do it, the perfect place to do that. Because regardless of what your project is, even if it has nothing to do with what you want to do, as long as you're passionate about it, as long as you're interested in it, you're going to learn a lesson.
That is powerful advice from the recent winner of the Student Life Leadership Awards for the junior class. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you don't know what you're passionate about until you start doing it. As someone who's on her fourth career, you know, the more I live in life, the more I know I don't know, and the more I find that when I jump in and experience things, then I sort of start to figure things out. So I appreciate that. I love it. All right, so we are going to ask a little bit more engagement from all of you via a really cool thing called Mentimeter. So if you can all whip out your trusty phones, which I know you have next to you, and scan the QR code. If you're on your phone for the Zoom, which I totally get, you can go to menti.com and that's the code. We're going to ask you to respond to a prompt so that you can share one thing you will do to develop your leadership skills after listening to these fine ladies. And it's okay if your answer is apply to the Millennium Fellowship for 2023. I'm okay with that. You guys can go to Mentimeter and use the code there. Michelle's put it in the chat as well. We're going to make a cute word cloud of all of the intentions you guys have for developing leadership skills.
So I wasn't sure if everyone would be able to see everybody else's answers. So if it's okay, I'm gonna share this out over here as well.
I like that. Patience, please. Yes. That is a very underrated, but very important thing. Yes. All right. Seek new growth opportunities. I like that. Growth mindset is a really important and valuable thing. Apply for the Millennium Fellowship. Yes. Yes. And we're going to leave you with the codes and the links for you to sign up, because I think every single one of you should sign up for the Millennium Fellowship. There was a question in the chat earlier about, is it worth it doing it in your final semester? This is one of those amazing things that you can absolutely do in your last semester, because the fellowship is only in the fall semester and it ends before the fall semester itself ends. So it's absolutely valuable at any time that you do it. All right, I like these. I'm gonna hold you guys to these. This is fantastic. I can start becoming more organized and involve myself in clubs. If we go back to the poll that we did at the beginning, so many of you see opportunities for leadership in clubs and organizations. I work with this phenomenal nonprofit where the leader of that, and it's church-based, it's faith-based, and he creates leadership opportunities for young people from minoritized communities, because there was no other place for them to develop these skills in these neighborhoods except for the church. And he said, you know, what if we did it intentionally? What if instead of falling into it accidentally, we made a concerted effort and created a framework for leadership development? And I do think that being involved in a club is a fantastic way of getting your feet wet within the safe environment of FIU, with an advisor, with a mentor. But as some of you also said in our poll at the beginning, with friends who can support us and show up for us and who have our back while we're doing these things. So I would think all of these things are important.
If I can add one more, I know I'm not officially part of this panel, but I feel so closely connected to all of you. I think another big one is that as a student, there are opportunities afforded to you that as soon as you step off of official student affiliation in this campus may not be as easily accessible to you anymore. So learning and growing and doing those things as a student while you still have the time and space and resources to do that, take advantage.
Agreed. And I, as somebody who was not super involved, because I worked full-time while I was in my bachelor's and master's and in my educational specialist degree, I didn't really have the time to engage in this, but I see it in my students, how valuable it is and how connected they feel. It's so much harder to like miss class if after class you've got a meeting and it's for a committee and you know you've got to be there for it. And so we're more accountable for this. I agree with the person who's talking about networking. I think networking is something that everyone talks about, but not a whole lot of people help us do. Networking is hard. And one of the things the Millennium Fellowship forces you to do is create an elevator pitch. And they've got a training module on how to do that networking. And we sometimes can do activities for that. Everyone says, yeah, I graduated from college. I know how to network. What does that even mean? Yeah, and a TA, I'm looking at someone, I hope to be a TA. Being a TA is a fantastic way of learning what it would look like to be an expert in the field. But again, with the benefit of like your whole job doesn't depend on it, right? Because I'm a student still. And so that's a great way of doing that. Join a club, absolutely. I like this. I will pay more attention to how leaders in the classroom and in everyday life act towards situations and incorporate that into my daily life. Aspire to be like the people that lead, right? Find someone that you're like, I want to be like them when I grow up. I still do that, by the way. I want to be like them when I grow up, right? And then what is it that they do? There's a powerful lecture series by Dale Carnegie, the guy who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he's got a whole module in that book. I did a training series where it says, find someone who you admire and make a list of one trait of theirs that you want to emulate. And I like that idea. Be like people who lead. Excellent. All right. So this is great. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. This has been a wonderful sort of general space. We have someone who's going to come and talk to us about civic engagement for a little bit. But before we go, I wanted to see if there's any questions that we wanted to address right away.
I saw a question in the chat like a while ago, and it was like, should you still apply to be a fellow if you're graduating in December? And yes, the answer is yes, do that. It's a great way to kind of end. It's going to be a little tricky because it's your last semester, but it's kind of meant to be a half a semester thing. When you graduate, you can still continue your project, but you're not going to be tied down to what you're kind of doing. It's an experience that's really tailored to that one semester. So if you are graduating in December, I would definitely recommend you do it.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Shameless plug, apply to the Millennium Fellowship, but Michelle cleverly navigated us towards this page. If you like QR codes, because I know that's what all the cool kids use, there's a QR code in the corner. You can also just go to millenniumfellows.org, apply. You can also reach out to me. My email is at the bottom there. I'm aprado@fiu.edu. I'll put it in the chat in a minute. At this stage, there's not a whole lot of individual support that I'm giving for applications, but I've got copies of some of the application prompts from last year that Natalie C shared with us generously. There's a WhatsApp chat that is about 15 students who have applied for the Millennium Fellowship so far for the upcoming fall. So I can put you in touch with them. And I think that's a great way to sort of build community and get motivated to be able to do this kind of work. I said I was going to put in the chat. Now I just got to open up my chat. Technologically. All right. So I'm going to put my email in the chat in case anybody wants further information about the Millennium Fellowship. All right. So Maya Rilke-Friedman, who actually was also one of the 2022 Millennium Fellows and still continues the work today, is doing some work with Engage Miami and sort of in line with what we're talking about of leadership skills, wants to talk to us about civic engagement and voting. So Maya, the floor is yours.
So hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Maya, and I'm a student fellow for Engage Miami this semester. I'm just going to share my screen really quick, if that is okay. Okay. Can everybody see that? This is the little presentation. Okay, cool. So basically, yeah, I'm a student fellow for Engage Miami this semester, and as she said, I was a Millennium Fellow as well, so that was awesome to be a part of. But basically here, Engage Miami is just a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization focused on civic engagement, voter activation, and issue organizing. So basically, just getting people out to vote and feeling confident in their voice in going out to vote. And so this is just a little graphic to show how Gen Z and millennials really make up a large portion of the voting block. So some people may feel that their vote doesn't matter, or that like one vote doesn't matter. But the thing is, individuals make up groups. And the fact of the matter is that Gen Z and millennials, we're really going to start to come out in big numbers. And if we do come out in big numbers, we can really make a difference in an election. And so here is just a quick basic breakdown of government. We have the executive branch and the legislative branch. And this is just to also emphasize the importance of local elections as well. So when you go down to the county level and the municipal level, we have our mayors and city managers who they enforce the laws. And then the legislative branch, we have the city commission, city council, and board of county commissioners, and they make the laws. So they make the laws that directly impact our community. And so who is eligible to vote? You just have to make sure that you are a US citizen, that you are 18 years old on or before election day. If you're 16, you can pre-register, and then you just have to make sure that you've never been convicted of a felony, or that you've had your rights restored, and that you're registered to vote by Florida registration's deadline. And so Florida is a closed primary state, meaning that if you are not a member of a certain political party, you cannot vote in that primary election, let's say. So if you're a Republican or independent, you can't vote in a Democratic primary, and vice versa, but you can vote in general elections. And so this is just the overview of local elections happening. There's one in Sweetwater on May 9th. And this is just to tie it back into the presentation of today with sustainability and just being a leader. If you go out and make your voice heard and vote, that in and of itself is kind of being a leader, because you're making your voice heard on a certain issue. And if there's something that you care about, I mean, we're in Miami, so sustainability, I feel like, is more of like a hot topic. That's something that's very important that you could possibly voice your concerns over. And so this is just methods of voting. So there's vote by mail, early voting, and voting on election day, of course. Early voting, we have an early voting site in the SASC building, actually. And with voting by mail, I guess I'll go to the next slide. Voting by mail, those reset every 2 years in Florida, the request for it. So if that is your preferred method of voting, we have QR codes here, and you just have to make sure that you get those every 2 years. And then one more thing, this is just to get involved with us. If you're interested in civic leadership and civic engagement, you could definitely contact us. We have a QR code here to give you some access to more information about us, but also asks you about the issues you care about in your community. So that could be climate change or affordable housing or anything, any of like the sustainable development goals, you know, in the Millennium Fellowship. Anything like that, you can voice your concerns over and volunteer with us if you'd like. So if anyone, you know, is registered to vote or not registered to vote, or would just like to talk to me or anything like that, I do table Mondays and Tuesdays, and I'm actually going to be tabling after this in GC if anyone would like to come up and talk to me and get registered or anything like that. But yeah, thank you for letting me have the time to speak today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Maya. And I'm looking at all of you who said, I'm going to be more engaged. I'm going to join a club. I'm going to do more stuff on campus. This is a really ideal opportunity to build some leadership skills for something that really matters, which is having a voice in the way things are run. And so I think that Engage Miami is a wonderful organization. They were here in the fall, Michelle? They were here in the fall for one of our TTRs. We are big fans of Engage Miami. And they don't push a particular agenda. They're not pushing a particular platform. They're not saying register to vote Democrat, but register to vote Republican. They're saying register to vote, let your voice be heard. And so I think that's a great opportunity. I know Maya is doing an internship with them right now that is about to end, which means there are probably openings to do.
There are openings. If you check out our website, I believe they're on there.
So that would be a fantastic opportunity. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. It was really wonderful to be in this room with you. This is our last TTR of the semester. Never fear, we will be back in full force in the fall. Moving forward, Michelle and I are working to see how many of these can be virtual every semester. So there'll be at least 1 or 2 every semester that will be virtual, if not more, because we hear you. We know how much more convenient it is. We know how busy you are. We know how much you have on your plates. So thank you for joining us.
And thank you, Anna, for leading this really important discussion, and all of our student leaders for being here today and sharing so much of yourselves and your experiences. I know it is so difficult to be vulnerable and share part of that process with so many people, but like someone said earlier, right, we emulate the people that we see leading us, and your example here is deeply, deeply appreciated. So yeah, as Anna mentioned, this is our very last TTR for the spring 2023 series. We will return in the fall, and then in the summer, we're working on putting together the full lineups for fall and spring of the next academic year. So if you can, take a minute and give us some feedback. Let us know what you want to see for TTR. We are absolutely open to student input and student-led discussion topics. And we want to hear from you so that we can make this programming as relevant to your experiences and the work that you're trying to do while you're here at FIU as possible. So this QR code is a quick feedback survey. We are happy, pleased to hear from you and hear those thoughts and contributions. Otherwise, it was an absolute pleasure to have all of you here. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again in the fall.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.